So at this juncture, our app component is rendering two food items component, and it is passing a different array of food items to each one, and also using the component prop to specify the type of component that should be returned for every food item. What we're going to attempt to do in this lesson is refactor our design even further, and our ultimate goal is to render just one single food items component, period, in order to account for all of our items. So to begin this process, what I'm going to do is consolidate both of our arrays up above. So I'm going to merge my burritos array into my tacos array right here. So the first thing I want to do is rename this to be items, since it's just going to consist of food items rather than only tacos or burritos. And then of course, what I want to do is cut and paste these two objects into the array above, like so, and then delete our former burritos array. And since we want to take care of things like the key prop in React, I'm just going to update the ID of these items right here to be 4 and 5 to make sure they are distinct in case this array is utilized for the map method later on. So now we have our array of 5 food items, and of course I want to render 5 cards, but I still want to maintain the same idea of having a taco card and a burrito card. So as I scroll down, let's say I eliminate the second food items component render right here. This is fine. And then of course we know we need to update items right here to be items, right? That should hopefully make sense. That's not too crazy. The hard part is what we do with this component prop, because here we are currently hard coding the type of component that we want to render for every food item. And if we put all taco cards, then of course the issue there is we're only going to see taco cards, right? And if we replace that with burrito card, then we're only going to see burrito cards. So we need a way to dynamically render different cards depending on the food item that we're using while still using food items. So how can we make this a reality? Well, here's one potential possibility. What if we added a new component property to each one of our food item objects? So right here, in addition to the ID, the name, and the image, we could specify the type of component that should be rendered for this specific food item. It would look like this. For example, for our first food item, I would add a component property, and I would specify that this should be rendered as a taco card. Then down below for this one, similarly, I'll add a component and specify that it should be a taco card. And for our third one, this should also be a taco card, and that is our final taco in the food items list. Then of course, for our fourth and fifth, we simply add a component property, but this time around it's going to be burrito card. So do that, and then this component is also going to be burrito card. Okay, so now each object has a property that specifies what component it's going to need. Now I'm going to try to delete this component prop right here because we no longer want to provide it. And right now, of course, the app will break. So if I go into my browser, you'll notice that the entire screen collapses. The entire app is not working. Let's talk a little bit about why. So if I go back into VS Code, remember that previously we had component coming in as a food items component prop, right? So it was flowing down in line as an actual prop called component. So now we're no longer going to have a component prop. What we're going to have instead is a component property that is available on every food item object. And we are destructuring those properties right here on line 2. Here, where we are taking ID, name, and image, is now where we're going to have access to a component property, right? So I'm going to just cut and paste this code from here. It's no longer a component prop, but it is an object property right here on each food item object that we are iterating over. So when we invoke the map method, we're going to perform an iteration over all 5 of these objects. And for all of those objects, we're going to take ID, name, image. We're going to take the component property and rename it to be component with a capital C. And then whatever it is, we're going to return that. So now this is even more dynamic than what we previously had, right? Because previously we had a component prop, but that was hard coded to be either a taco card or burrito card. Now the dynamic component that's going to be placed here can vary iteration by iteration, right? On the first 3 iterations, we're going to specify that the component that should be returned in that JSX array is going to be taco card, right? And then when JavaScript in utilizing the map method gets to the 4th and 5th object, we're instead specifying that the component should be burrito card. So now we're still going to use the map method to generate an array of 5 components, but the first 3 are going to be taco cards, and the 4th and 5th are going to be burrito cards instead. But the rest of the code remains exactly the same. So now if I go back to my browser, we can see that everything is working exactly as expected. Once again, I can right-click, go into Inspect, and go into my React Components tab right here from React DevTools. And now notice we only have one top-level food items component. It is accepting our items prop right here, and that is the array of all 5 food items like so. And each one is specifying which component it should render. So you can see taco card for the first 3. And then, of course, if I expand this, we'll see that we have those respective dynamic components being rendered because they are specified by the component property that is now living on each object, right? And that's kind of the beautiful part about this design is it's even more dynamic. We can now utilize the food items component once and not have to hard code a single component that it can render, but rather simply have food items be responsible for the map method and the iteration and the dynamic rendering of some components. And then we specify what those are in the object that we pass in, or more specifically, the array of objects that we pass in. All right, so hopefully, once again, this is getting us to think more creatively about how components can be pretty powerful in React once we start thinking about traditional JavaScript concepts and the dynamic nature of things like properties and constants and things like that. All right, that's all there's to cover in this lesson, so I will see you in the next one.